Man time, let's go. Let's go, let's go. What are we on here? Episode 8, technically 15, but whatever, who's keeping track? From Karen to Becky. Athol Kay, Married Man's Sex Life Primer. Gotta love it. Beauty. Welcome, everybody. Welcome one, welcome all. This is going to be the fun chapter. It's a bit simpish when push comes to shove. And this is where a lot of guys run into a lot of trouble running their maps, a lot of trouble when repairing their relationships, a lot of trouble when falling for what I argue is the greatest bait and switch ever, in that it's the only one that exists that's ever been beneficial to a man. Sell them on sex, deliver self-actualization. Again, thank you so much. I see you guys in the chat. Hope you're enjoying your time here in this nice sunny fall morning. Hopefully the restrictions haven't been too hard on you. You're not going stir crazy. I would argue for those who have had tenuous relationships, it might be good at this point because, well, let's face it. If you see too much of the person, you kind of get sick of them. It can have a degrading effect. It's almost like government enforced one-itis. So, when push comes to shove. And that's the chapter 25. But she's the only girl for me. And this goes over one-itis. So, many low-sex marriages have a husband that is Cupid stupid over the wife, which it's a weird term, but whatever, while she can barely tolerate his existence in a romantic sense. She's usually perfectly happy to have him wait on her and bring home a paycheck, though. She just doesn't want to have sex with him, save an occasional drip feed to keep him on the hook and make him still bring her stuff. It's a tragic twist when you fall, when your love for her kills her love for you. I know Rollo has talked in quite a few podcasts now about how the estrus cycle for some chimps, like, and he uses primates as an example, so it's not a perfect map, but it kind of illustrates the point rather well, where the primate, when going through estrus, will sleep with the biggest gorilla in the group or the biggest chimp in the group, and then during the off season kind of sleeps with other dudes because they'll give provision. That same dynamic is in play here for a lot of guys who just don't have desire from their wife, but they're stuck within a marriage or a relationship. She'll give you just enough to keep you happy, or not even keep you happy, to keep you from not being miserable to the point you'll do something about it and you'll still work for her. It's essentially intermittent rewards, which, if you guys haven't seen the concept, I can't remember who was the scientist that did that. Intermittent rewarding. I want to say B.F. Skinner, but I couldn't say for sure. Anyways, so intermittent reinforcement is a conditioning schedule in which a reward or a punishment, in this case, smashing or not smashing, is not administered every time the proper behavior happens. And what they found is that, and the experiment that I always refer to when people talk about this is with, I think it's rats, maybe pigeons, but anytime they did something, possibly even dogs, doesn't really matter. Here's the point. Dog would do something, they'd give the dog a treat. And they did it every time the dog did something, and they thought they were just reinforcing things. But here's what happens. What they found out is that the dog then would only do that proper behavior when he was hungry. Same thing here with a guy. If a girl sleeps with a guy every time he brings home a paycheck, then he's only going to worry so much about working harder when he's horny. Which, I mean, there's a lot of thirst, but that's the idea of it anyway. Now, if you do it intermittently, so not every time, and I'd have to look it up, but I couldn't tell you what the exact number is. I'm leaning towards 25% because of that same idea of the unpredictability of in economic terms, where if you change up your routines 25% of the time, it makes you sufficiently unpredictable. So I would argue if that intermittent reward comes 25% of the time, what happens though is they find that the dogs in those cases would, even if they weren't hungry, they would constantly do the thing hoping to get a treat because they didn't know, maybe it was this time, maybe it's that. And that's the idea, is because we're pattern-seeking creatures, that I don't get it. A plus B is supposed to equal C. A plus B equals treat. A plus B didn't give a treat. Maybe I just got to try harder. Maybe it didn't work that time. And then they keep doing it. It's what we describe as an ego investment. But if you look up intermittent rewards and how the addiction of it happens, that's how you can see it play out in a more clinical sense. And the case here, it's such a display of lower value. It kind of ignores the dynamic at play of a wife that can't stand you, but is willing to do the bare minimum to keep you around. So, continuing on. If a basically healthy wife can't hold a job, keep a house, or have sex with you with any degree of functionality, she's just dead weight. From a purely rational point of view, you may as well cut her loose and go on with your life. But the husband with one-itis for his own wife can rationally know that she is a giant millstone around his neck, but he can't leave her anyway. This is why we talk about, I don't want to say chore play, but like doing chores. And if you remember back, like early on in this, I think it was episode 2, maybe episode 3, where they were talking about beta behaviors to do, fixing things around the house, doing the dishes, being more active in the childcare. That's the purpose of it, is to break this addiction. I kind of hinted at what we were good at before. Well, here we are 6 hours later. Here's why. Understand that for guys who have one-itis, their girl could be absolutely useless. She could be fat. She can be lazy. She could be frigid. She can be bitchy. She can be absolutely useless to his life in any sense of the word. And he'll still call her a high-quality woman because he's got that dopamine hit. It's the same as a crackhead. Crackheads know crack's bad for you. They know crack smells like vinegar. They hate crack. But, hey, crack's all right. It helps me with my asthma or something stupid like that, But he really is addicted to her. The dopamine, the vasopressin, literally tether him to her. So what Athol suggests, though, is that you purposefully stop all the extra lovey-dovey catering to her. That's part of, not rewarding bad behavior. She doesn't see it as a reward anyway. If you act extra loving and extra beta to a girl that doesn't have that alpha, desirable attractiveness to you, no dopamine into it, then she's just going to take it as a display of lower value. Kind of the equivalent of an ugly omega male hitting on a girl at the bar. She's like, oh, get away from me. But I still need the paycheck, so, yeah, get away from me. I'll maybe give you a handy on your birthday. What's that? What was the show? Not Walking Dead. Breaking Bad. How it basically starts with that premise. That's why everybody hates Skylar, by the way. So the idea is you start doing all these things. You start being more self-reliant. And by keeping yourself busy, you're not going back to that dopamine drip feed of your girl. And then it kind of snaps you in and you realize, oh, yeah, she is pretty useless. Why the hell is she even here? So that's good. You can tie up that plot point and we'll move on. Now, here is an important thing from this chapter. So if you have one-itis, the map will fail. This is the really critical point of this chapter. You can up your sex rank all the way up to 10. You could do really well with it, but once you get to this point and you can't actually follow through with looking like you could really leave if pushed hard enough, you're still tethered to her, so you fold. This is what I call the bluff. The bluff scenario, or the 2-year pivot. A lot of guys have this, and for some reason it always seems to be at the 2-year mark. I'm sure psychologically there's a way to explain it. I'm not that guy. I'm just going to say this is the way we've observed it. It's usually 18 to 24 months. Just be aware yourself, if you're running your map, around the 1-year mark, in between there and the 2-year mark, if you have covert contracts, they're going to be exposed. So again, if the whole point of your male action plan is to win her back, this is the point where you realize that you can't put that onto a girl. They don't like the responsibility. They will actively sabotage it, and the placation of it just won't work. You could be hot as hell, but if she still thinks you is that bag of hammers that she just can't stand, it's not going to change. And that's why, going back, pre-selection is such a strong thing. A girl has this mental model of you being a schlub that she can't stand, but is trapped with in her head. And until, some chick walks up, her best friend's like, hey, your husband's getting attractive. If you're not going to use him, can I? Or, they're not going to say that, but you get what I mean. Gets her hamster running. She's like, oh, geez. And then she has to, that's to a lesser extent, that's the female version of getting zeroed out when she realizes that she's going to lose this man that she wants. They hate that. So on to the overarching point here is if you make the goal her and changing her behavior, you're going to fail because it's obviously manipulative. Now, manipulation, I've been saying it all along, it's not bad, but overt manipulation just doesn't work. People sense it and it's missing that plausible deniability. Same as a girl, you're picking her up at the bar and you're like, hey, I'm going to take you home and I'm going to rail you good. And she's like, hey, no, I'm not that kind of girl, man. I think you got me mistaken for somebody else. Now, she most likely would have gone back and smashed, but because you made it overt, you remove the mystery, the plausible deniability, the anti-slut defense comes up. It's the same thing here. You have to be able to act, converse, and be completely congruent on 2 different levels. the signal and the wave. If you don't know what that means, that's like it's a term about EM spectrum stuff. So if you're listening to this right now, there's a certain carrier wave. Things go across the internet on. That's how electrical lines work. There's a carrier wave. Within the carrier wave, there's signal. And that signal is all the information that creates all this. So same thing with the way you're communicating. There's a conversation, signal, language there, but underneath it, all the body language, all the subtext, all the implications, all the wrapped up mental models, that's the level you need to be communicating. And the beauty of that level is your words don't matter. Only your actions do. And only the other person's perception. So once you learn to speak that, which we commonly refer to as womanese, you can speak in Manglish carrying the idea that you're not a man to be trifled with. But you don't club them over the head with it. It's just kind of like, what's that Wisconsin thing? F around and find out. It's kind of like that. But being very subtle. So next part is women are replaceable. From a fairly cynical point of view, any one woman can be replaced by any other woman. All a woman needs to do to make you happy is some mix of working a job and keeping house, be reasonably enjoyable company, and have a functional vagina that she happily lets you use. The job description really isn't all that hard or that confusing. Most women would make a reasonably good wife for you if given the opportunity. Again, I've talked about this before as well, where, everybody has that hot babe 0 to 10 scale or 1 to 10. Oh, is she a 1? Is she a 2? Is she a 3? Is she an 8? Is she a 9? There's no 9s or 10s. There's no 1s, 2s, or 3s. Women cluster around the median. I mean, morbid obesity aside, most women are 4s, 5s, and 6s. Everything else is an ego investment. Or, disfigurement. Yeah. And you can really think about it as such. Is she the kind of girl that I would smash but not tell anybody about? Is she the kind of girl I would smash but not brag about? Or is she the kind of girl that I would smash and brag about it? That's really the only scale that matters, because girls don't fly in the extremes. Sure, some celebrity, some hardcore makeup, being extra good with girl game might push her up and down, but that only works insofar as your brain interprets that from the dopamine response you're getting from it. So he doesn't mean to make women sound like chattel here. I don't like the fact that he keeps apologizing for being man. Like, this whole book has a hint of it. And you can kind of see, I think I talked about it before an episode or two ago about how Athol eventually placated women to the point that it ruined his business, ruined the married man sex life forums, essentially left a lot of men out to dry. All because he still has this belief in women at the end. So, I mean, who's going to say that we're treating women like chattel here? Nobody, except for people that don't have no man and can't get one anyway. Then he has to do the equating thing. Men are no less replaceable than women are. And I'm like, dude, who cares? Right now, I'm not having sex with men. I'm not smashing men. I'm not trying to smash men. I do not care about the BS of any man except for this one. And that's the approach you should have too. Don't justify it. Don't apologetics for it. No apologetics for it. There's a great post by Whisper. It's called Yes, Virginia. You do have to be an asshole. I'm going to post it in the chat here. I reference it a lot, so most of you guys should probably already know it, but this is the attitude to have, and this is something that Athol Kay has completely missing from this chapter. So he kind of says, a lot of people say, is it possible to do all this self-reflective, self-improvement man stuff without being objectively horrible to women? And then you want to do exactly what Athol did. Apologies. Well, hey, I know men are like this too, blah, blah, blah. Stop that. You're supposed to agree and amplify, but you don't, because deep down, you're not an asshole and you don't want to be. Well, crush that dream. And then he goes through the arguments here and how it kind of plays out. Just know that at the end of it, you realize that anything that doesn't put a woman's needs first in society is considered evil or heinous or, misogynist, whatever. And it's not a bug, it's a feature. Humankind would not be here 8 billion people strong and growing if we didn't have that before we had the Industrial Revolution. It just so happens now that we no longer live in a society of scarcity, and so it's poisoning us, where we need to start learning to adapt. And I hate to say it, women wanted equality. Well, we invented the dishwasher and fertilizer, and now we got it. The problem with equality is it also means nobody gives a shit about you. Everybody is equally apathetic to everybody else. And it sounds cynical, but there's a certain freedom in it, which I am surprised more guys don't take. Like, picture this. back in the day, you were with a woman because that's what you did. That's what you did. You took care of her because that was your duty, blah, blah, blah. Everything always had to be like at threat point. But consider now, a woman does not need a man to provide for her, so she doesn't need a man. And women are replaceable. Yeah, they may be more valuable and the eggs are expensive, sperm is cheap one, but there's 8 billion of them. You'll find another one. And so there is no cudgel holding you there. There's no forced obligation. There's no duty. So if you want to be with somebody, it has to be a want, a desire. There's a certain, what's the word for it? Not self-actualization, but a certain autonomy about it. If she wants to be with me, it's because she wants it. If I want to be with her, it's because I want it. And all these guys worried about genuine desire and all that crap kind of ignore this point. Saying, I'm going my own way. No relationships, nothing. Well, hey, I hate to say it, but a relationship is the ultimate way to know if you're getting genuine desire from a girl. And this is why there's so much stuff around the marriage, because the marriage is kind of the last threat point that guys have to do their obligation. But it's completely one-sided. So again, the point is, don't apologize. Unapologetically, man. And that's the only way to go about it. He continues on, objectively, there's nothing special about your current wife. The only thing that makes her seem special to you is a bunch of hormonal markers cycling around your body telling you that she is a wonderful woman beyond all reason. I have heard this hundreds of times, and I'm not even exaggerating. A guy will tell me, she is a great wife. She has a good job. She's a great mother, takes care of the kids. And I'm like, okay, so why are you calling me then? She sounds wonderful, so why are you having any problems? Well, she hasn't touched me in like 6 months. I'm like, so obviously she's not that good, is she? Because that's kind of like the bare minimum. It's like saying, I have the greatest car ever. It's super fast. It's got best paint job. Engine's huge. Doesn't have any tires, but it's just an amazing car. It's like, well, it's not really very amazing if it's missing the tires, is it? So even sex with a new woman's not going to be all that different. It's not like you get to have sex with a new woman or even 10 new women with a new penis. All the sensations are the same no matter what. If you're a 7 and leave your 7 wife to remarry another 7, it's going to be about the same, but you might have 10 times as much sex as you do with a new wife. And that's just it. Women are replaceable, and you have to look at it that way. That's the only way this works, and it seems counterintuitive, but it doesn't really when you look into it. Guys who think that you have to be like doting and in love and focus on your wife end up killing her desire for them. Guys who are kind of aloof, I can take her or leave her. Meh, what is she doing? They're always focused on the girl has to constantly show that she's worth keeping a relationship with her for. And those guys tend to be happier because the girl gets her, I get to chase a man thing, which they love. Same way that we like kind of chasing a girl. Everybody loves the chase more than the catch. But it's a reinforcement thing. And so the less you want it, the more you're going to have it. And that's why guys who tell me, how do I get a girlfriend? I'm like, dude, you guys are clueless. Stop trying to get a girlfriend. It's not your job to get a girlfriend. It's her job to try and lock you down. And by you trying to do her job, that pisses her off. Like imagine hiring somebody to work for you and they just keep doing your job. It's like, I didn't hire you to do my job. I'm doing my job. I hired you to do your job so I can focus on my job and not focus on why this stuff's not getting done. But they're like, no, boss. I just want to be the good employee. And he goes, you're fired. And that's essentially what happens here. He has a couple things to help guys get over the one-itis. The first one here is get a proper therapeutic massage from a female masseuse. Not a rub and tug, like a real massage. And I never had to do it, but I kind of get where he's going with this, so I kind of like it. So he goes, get your massage, focus on the comfort of it. Don't think you have to be uncomfortable about it. Just let it happen. No discomfort, no asking her if everything's okay. Strictly selfish. Yes, make me enjoy the massage. And he goes, think about this. How many weeks go by before you get as much physical touch from your wife as you got in this massage session? Massages cost $50 to $100 depending on where you live. How much comes out of your pocket over your wife over those weeks? Does there seem to be a fair comparison? He's not even talking about sex here. He's just talking about touch. And for a lot of guys, you kind of need to walk them through the process. Yeah, you paid this girl $100. She gave you a massage. You got all those touchy-feelies. You got all the sensations. You felt a lot better at the end of it. You actually felt good in a non-sexual way. When was the last time your wife did that for you? And then he starts putting $1 to it. Well, how much have you spent on her nagging? $200, $400? It's more than $100. And then you guys may remember this if you're a fan of Terrence Bopp. He calls it hooker math. Figure out how much money you spent on your wife in the last year and divide that number by the amount of times you've had sex in the same time period. That's your cost per lay. Now, is that more or less than the price of a nice hooker? Again, sometimes you really have to bring the point home with a lot of these guys that are hooked on their wife. They're caught in that learned helplessness situation, and they have that intermittent rewards giving them constant drip feeds of dopamine for very, very small reward. You have the guy do the math. Yeah, here. So how many times have you slept with your wife this year? And he'll say, like, I don't know, twice. All right, well, how much have you had to spend on her? Well, I bought this. Like, we're not even talking food. We're just talking luxuries. Well, I bought her flowers. I bought her birthday gift. Took her on vacation. Ends up $12,000 over 2 days. He's like, dude, you know what kind of prostitute you can get for $1,200? And I guarantee they put more effort into it. And again, the guy will argue with you. He'll argue. They need time to mull this stuff over. If you're giving hooker math to one of your friends who's in this horrible situation, you can't ask him to draw the conclusion right away. You got to throw these out as a rhetorical thing. Do the math. Go let him do his thing. Eventually he'll kind of, yeah, you're right. What the hell? Another element of getting past your one-itis, take a vacation alone. I like this one. I actually did this when I was single. For me, it was getting over approach anxiety, because I was always worried about things. So I just flew, didn't even tell anybody, didn't even get a leave pass that said I could go there. So it's technically illegal at the time for the military, but whatever. Went down to Mexico, didn't know anybody, made friends, hit on people when I was there. Struck out every time. But never had approach anxiety after that. But for this case, a lot of times just getting some space between you and her is a good way to get that dopamine hit out of your system. It's like going cold turkey. And for a lot of guys that are hooked on their wife, take 2 weeks, go to your parents, go to vacation, go on a work trip. A lot of times when you get back, you take a look at it with fresh eyes and you realize just how badly you've been taken advantage of and how complicit you are in that. So, something else to consider. If you're having a hard time losing the one-itis for your wife, take a break. And unlike girls, when you say you want some space, you actually want some space. You don't just want dick. Yeah, it is what it is. Whatever. The next part here is, are you Captain Save-A-Ho? And this, if you learn nothing else from this episode, learn this. The purpose of a marriage is not to save a woman. The purpose of marriage is to have a productive, functional, and happy life together. Now, I would say not marriage per se, but just any relationship. The purpose is a productive, functional, and happy life. Productive, functional, and happy. Content might be a more accurate word, but we'll use happy here. It's not your job to act like her support staff and bail her out of every mess. You're not responsible for her feelings. You don't exist to make her comfortable. You don't light yourself on fire to keep other people warm. That's not why you were put on this earth. Moving on, balanced relationships. So he talks about Athol and his wife, Jennifer, don't blindly believe they're soulmates. I sell her on a pretty good husband, and she sells him on a pretty good wife. It's balanced, fair exchange, and we're great together, but we both know if we didn't have each other, somebody else would probably do. Again, it's one of those things. You have to accept your disposability, and it frees you. Like, all of this, at the end of the day, it's about freeing you from your obligations to focus on the things that bring value to your life. And not just you. You're getting your wife to focus on that too, because sometimes you have these very dysfunctional relationships between the two of you where she's doing her wifely duties. Maybe she's hardcore Catholic or Muslim or something, and you're doing your husbandly duties. Both of you are miserable. Let all that shit go. And it sounds all clinical and unromantic, but he says, Dr. Helen Fisher has a wonderful story that she tells to explain this. By this, I mean the idea that I'm breaking down relationship dynamics here through Athol's work, through Rollo's work, through Glover's work. And it's like, doesn't that take all the magic away from it? So Helen Fisher's story is, you could know everything there is to know about chocolate cake, how to make it, what all the ingredients are, all the chemistry that happens when a cake is baked, and so on. But none of that knowledge affects the sensation of you enjoying chocolate cake. Once the cake's in your mouth, you just experience the chocolate cake. Same thing. It's like makeup. Knowing how it works doesn't make it not work anymore. It's not magic tricks. Moving on past there. Oh, trying to do my best to keep... I see a bunch of the stuff. We're getting a little bit too edgy in here, so it keeps removing some of the stuff from chat. So I'm trying to keep things going for you guys here. If you're watching this after the fact, do stick with the live chat. You're going to find the conversation flows very nicely and amplifies this. Personal stories of other guys talking about it. Great work from the community. Most of these guys in here, too, are part of Patreon community. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's patreon.com/join/Ryan Stone. I'll put a link in the chat. It's also in the description of the video, so come on and check it out. It's a lot of stuff like this, personally tailored to a lot of people. So we're on 26 now, common mistakes. Cheating on your wife. Dun dun dun. And he brings up a story of like you were a 6, married to a 7, you build yourself up to an 8, and then you cheat, blah, blah, blah. So she may not even realize it, but when you become more sexually attractive, and I don't just mean physically, I mean other girls want you, pre-selection, all the works. You'll start noticing some of the dozens of indicators of interest she'll start throwing out at you. Dressing better when she expects to see you, hair flipping and stroking, reapplying lipstick, licking lips, smiling, eye contact, touching her body, especially her neck, sitting with her body oriented towards yours, sitting with her legs open towards you, laughing at your jokes even if they're not good, taking an article of clothing off in front of you, small acts of service that are not required, seeking to stand or sit near you, increased breathing rate, being eager to see you, unnecessary phone calls, emails, and text messages just to create contact, touching you in any way. Not just your wife, but other women start doing this too. One day, you're going to be having a great conversation with this woman, not even trying to seduce her, and you'll suddenly realize that she's doing half the things on the list above. Then you realize that all you need to do is instigate, isolate, escalate a little, and she very likely would have sex with you if you can be discreet. Now, as an aside, being discreet is the key for seduction. You've always got to be discreet. Plausible deniability, anti-slut defense. Girls don't mind hot sex with hot men. But what they don't like is being thought of as a girl who likes hot sex with hot men. So you have to remember that that reputation, that ego investment she has in being the good girl, is more important than actually getting what she wants. And as long as you're respectful of that, you respect that boundary, and you're able to play with it. Again, I talk about it in my book. You know we're not having sex tonight, right? It's one of the last chapters, and it's where a guy realizes when she says this, she's just trying to tell you to protect her reputation. And she'll give you 100%. Just make sure you give her that little thing. It's a value add. I'd love to smash. Just want to make sure that you're not going to make me feel bad about it afterwards. You're like, yeah, no problem. I'd never do that. And how that plays out in conversation is how seduction works in a nutshell. So he does give a caveat here. And there's been a few guys who eventually go outside the marriage. There's 2 types of cheating, and we'll get to that in a second. So it's not going to be some super hot 10 wanting to get back at her boyfriend who will be your test. Megan Fox won't be your test. Oh, that's a dated response. It's going to be somebody close to you. Somebody you've probably known for a while and even feel friendly and emotionally connected to. That's going to be your test. You may not see it coming until it's close to the point of no return. You will absolutely love every second of her company as well. You're biologically programmed to like it. And the great difficulty of this temptation is it's tempting. Now, he's talking about cheating from a blue-pilled perspective, and there's 2 types of cheating. There's cheating from a red-pilled perspective, and there's cheating from a blue-pilled perspective. Simply put, cheating from a blue-pilled perspective, and I wish Athol talked about this more, is validation seeking. Any girl that gives you a modicum of attention, who gets attracted to those things, generally things you're insecure about. If you're a fat guy in a dead bedroom, you get yourself in shape, she thinks your body's hot, that's an insecurity that she's latching onto and, stroking your ego over. You start doing that, and that's when marriages break up. Because your girl sees it for what it is. It's essentially some other girl getting that oxytocin and serotonin fix from you. Like the idea of resources. A girl will gladly share, like what's the word? The term is gladly share an alpha rather than be saddled with a loyal beta. But if that loyal beta cheats on her, well then what's the point? The whole point of having you around was for, free stuff, trickled sex, very little bit of it, be somewhat, mildly miserable. But if you're going to do that and embarrass me by cheating on me, you're out of here. And I'll weaponize the courts against you. That's where most of these guys talk about, like, don't ever do anything bad to your wife. And they're like, of course not, dude. You're not there yet. Now, the alternative is cheating from a red-pilled perspective. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just saying the way it tends to work is it's just about the sex. That's where you hear a lot of the girls talking about, he was a dog when I met him. I knew that. He comes home to me every night, and there's a certain... I guess the best way to describe this next part is, And a lot of people realize that doesn't happen. There's no way somebody's so alpha that, girls will gladly let them cheat on them. Picture this scenario, and I know this is common. Most people have parents like this. A mistress will stick around with a married man for years because he promises one day he might leave his wife for her. And the wife kind of knows as long as he doesn't rub her face in it. Those kind of situations can be fairly functional, but that's because the other girl has those assurances that she has his beta side. Yeah, he sleeps with a bunch of women, but he loves me. Now, I don't have a guide, a set of strategies or tactics or tips, because once you're there, you don't need somebody to tell you how to function in there. You just kind of know. You just get it. And so anything I would say that, from experiences, guys on the old Reddit, like Ultimate Cat, who used to do this. There's a couple other guys, but they're still like on there, and I don't want to name drop them, but they do this kind of stuff. They're discreet about it. They talk to us about it, and like they didn't say I got it from this book or this resource. They just kind of have to, once you put all of this stuff together, you build your own action plan. And for them, their action plan was wife gets first crack at my libido, not sole custody. I'm taking care of the kids. I'm taking care of the wife. I'm taking care of the girlfriend because she's great in every way, but this is just the one thing she just can't manage. So I'll deal with it. And again, it's just solving problems. Another point here, and this is a good one to think of too, even if you are cheating from a red pill perspective or a blue pill perspective, is that a lot of guys assume that the other woman isn't going to turn nutty on you and call your wife up. In fact, if the other woman thinks she's got a chance at being the new Mrs. You, she might actively seek to end your marriage by revealing the affair to your wife. I mean, if she's a 6 and you're an 8, wouldn't wrecking your marriage for a shot at having you permanently be smart? Something to think about, man. And this is why those guys I was talking about before, I'll mention him, as Ultimate Cat. Perfect example. He never slept with single girls. He always slept with other married girls. He's like, I want somebody who can keep a secret. I need discretion. And it's weird because like as a high value man that other girls would want, you start taking on those same concerns girls have. Like, I don't want this coming back to my life. This is just sex. Do your thing. It is what it is. Morally, is it good? Probably not. Ethically, is it bad? Probably. But what's the consequences? Adultery stopped being a reason for divorce years ago. So we can really say it's moral or unethical if there's no consequences to doing it? No. Like I said, it's a freeing thing too. You're there because you want to be there. You're loyal because you want to be loyal. Everything becomes a choice. And by everything becoming a choice, you gain the ultimate autonomy over your life. And yeah, people always hate these conversations. They assume the married red pill is a giant cheating farm, teaching guys how to sleep with chubby 5s on their wives. And it's like, nope, just giving you freedom. What you do with that is up to yours, up to you. Yeah, and all these things do kill your one-itis. So that's the other advantage of it too. Sometimes a guy just needs to get another one under his belt to realize his wife ain't that great. And then it kind of turns everything around. Funnily enough, Ultimate Cat and his wife still together. For some reason, his extreme individual need to maximize his alpha traits and enjoy the life as he saw fit actually strengthened their relationship. So just the right level of dysfunction to make everything work. Not my place to judge. Works for him. Kids are happy. He's happy. Wife's happy as far as I can tell. It's just one guy on the internet, so who knows? But it's his life. It's his life to live. Now, next part is facilitating her affair. This is another mistake a lot of guys make, where one thing that constantly surprises me is how frequently a husband plays an active role in creating an environment where his wife is tempted to cheat on him. If you constantly leave her alone with a man she finds attractive, there are fairly logical consequences that could kick in. This is one of those, like, I don't want to look like I'm jealous, and so I'm doing this. It's like, what's the other equivalent? There's like a crime equivalent where some, like, beta soy type guy walks around in a bad neighborhood, 3 thugs walking by him, and he's like, just to show that I'm not racist, I'm going to walk by him. And then they mug him. It's like, what did you think was going to happen? Girl gets drunk, not wearing underwear, walking behind a dumpster, surrounded by a group of dudes. What did you think was going to happen? Of course they're going to break the law. You set them up for success, and they performed horribly. Horribly well. Yeah. So, a couple examples he uses where guys facilitate their wife's affair. Strikes up a conversation with the builder working on the neighbor's house, and this goes on for several weeks. They both have mutual and clear attraction, and the husband becomes aware of it and uncomfortable with it. So his solution is to not show fear, and he asks the guy to remodel the kitchen in his house. Now the stay-at-home wife and the dude are in the house alone for a couple weeks. So in this case, the husband actually paid a guy to be around for a potential affair. Again, this need to look alpha by signaling unattractiveness and set your wife up. I know everybody gave Jack Murphy a lot of grief because he was pimping his girlfriend out on Tinder. He was cheating on her. She's like, I want her to date a bull too. But a lot of married guys do this without even thinking about it, just to show that they're not the jealous type. Which is, again, if you make the girl your source of validation, don't be jealous, honey. It's nothing. You're right. I'm not jealous. I'm a real man. I'm going to hire him to hang in the house all day while I'm at work. It's like you get what you reap what you sow, man. Number 2, husband has a younger bodybuilder friend who's a known player, yet he continues to see the friend frequently with his wife in tow and often has him over in the house. When the wife starts to lose a ton of weight and dress sexier, the husband just thinks it's great and loves it, but too late he discovers the weight loss was not for you but for the friend. The communication and the friend happen all behind the scenes via Facebook. That's another thing. This is why Dread works so well, like the self-improvement part of Dread, because that's the way a girl thinks. If she's leaving you for somebody else, she wants to get herself as hot as possible so she can hook him and leave you at the same time. It's called monkey branches. Never let go of that branch till that one's gone. So when a girl sees you improving yourself, their first thought is you're getting ready to move on, and that's where the dread comes in, the anxiety in that, and that can work in your favor, which is why I tell guys don't do too much reassurances. Just live your life. Why are you working out? I don't know. Feel like working out. Do you love me? Yeah, you're fine. If she really wants to keep you, she knows how, so you don't have to talk about this and reassure. Has she earned the comfort? In this case, if it happens out of the blue, then you know you're not the trigger for it, so just be aware. Number 3, the husband opens his home for 3 months to a young sports coach from another state. The husband's at work all day, and the coach works at night running sports practices, but all day the coach and the wife are together. Even one of my clients had that where the kid's soccer coach slept with his wife. But it's just one of those things. PTA courses, church groups. Another one, very common one. A lot of guys, their wife is like prevalent in the church, is like the good church marm. Sure enough, ends up sleeping with a guy from the congregation. But that's the point, is you don't want to be too accommodating for this stuff because you're just setting yourself up for failure. And the 4th one, so common, it's insane. The husband takes his best friend in for a couple months to help him out. Money troubles, got a divorce, whatever. Fast forward a few months and the best friend takes the wife, the kids, and the house, which he says was his plan from the beginning. I don't know. But absolutely do not trust another man not to make a move on your wife, no matter what he says about loyalty, honor, or the right thing to do. Men will say nearly anything to get access to good pussy. I would say this. Every single guy you see, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's in your life, who talks about loyalty and honor and brotherhood, no, they're just effing lying. They're all lying, because if you actually have this kind of like blind loyalty to your buddies, you don't have to constantly reassure them. That's their way of trying to like sucker you in. So just be very skeptical when guys talk about this brotherhood of men crap. If you don't believe me, start bringing up some Twitter names here of like the big brands, and I can tell you some behind the scenes stuff where they absolutely do not act towards brotherhood. A great example for that was like that old ADJ Rolo thing. Rolo helped him struggling through his divorce with his prostitute wife and took no fee to do the speaking thing. What did he get for his troubles? Called a fraud for like 3 years now. Like, dude, his wife was a prostitute and he still hates Rolo more, and Rolo was just trying to help him for nothing, for free. But whatever. 26.3 is doing nothing about her interest in another man. So don't make the mistake of viewing your wife becoming seriously interested in another man as a fitness test. By playing it cool and ineffective, you can effectively diffuse a real fitness test, but the same approach with a serious competitor is the complete opposite of what you need to do. Good example for this, Frenchie, an older gentleman, widowed his wife, and that's how he came there. He didn't know how to get over her. He would bring up how his wife had a super crush on the kid's sports coach. And his response to that, it's not to be cool and not act jealous. It wasn't be to, AMOG or any of that crap. He just started poking fun at her. Just poke fun. Laugh at her. That's a silly thing. You're an idiot for thinking that thing. Girl blushes. Again, it taps into that whole reputation thing. Cock blocks him. But he doesn't just become aloof and cool and unaffected. He's aware of the dynamic and he diffuses it perfectly. Now, so far that's the only strategy we have on that, because it doesn't come up that often. So just be aware that that's there, and be aware that, again, like we said before, show no fear, invite the guy into your house. It's like, no, man. But at the same time, you have to play it more refined, because if you act too weird about it, you're basically suggesting he's a threat, which ends up building attraction. It's like girls. Wow, this guy's deferring to that guy. He's worried about that guy as a threat. Maybe he is attractive. And you can actually screw yourself over. Athol here, though, puts, however, when another guy is starting to make traction on her, she's starting to get a dopamine reaction to him. So she's not actually bored anymore. So she's not trying to get you to do anything for her. What she actually wants you to do is get out of the way and leave you alone with him. He's kind of right there, but just be aware that I need space, you're too controlling. Any of those conversations that basically are her way of justifying getting distance between you and her, realize she just wants to smash this guy, and she's going to say the right combination of words to get there. She doesn't know she's doing it. It's like chocolate cake. You don't know what's happening. You just feel it. She's running off of instinct. So just realize if she's telling you she needs some space, she just wants to go hang out with a friend, she wants to have that girls' night out of the blue, these kind of things, the writing's on the wall. And again, don't overreact to this stuff, but realize it with a serious competitor, having a freak out moment is probably the worst thing you can do. Poking fun at her, sometimes it's the case that you just got to pack your bags and like, that's it, I'm done with this. But there's a whole lot of dynamics at play there, so if your approach is to generally show that you're unaffected by her and take a view that you'll just display higher value instead of taking direct action, that just gives her more room to interact with the other guy. The classic line given by the cheating partners early on is a request for space. So if she asks for space and you give it to her, what you think is her alone time is in fact a beeline for the other man. Anytime you hear the request for space, you need to immediately figure out if you're being clingy or if she's up to something. Either way, it's bad. She may not even be having sex with him. Could be an emotional affair. Could be just hanging out. He might not be interested, but she's trying to hook him anyway. The damage is done just the same. The energy that could have gone into making your marriage more enjoyable gets diverted and lost to another dude. So the idea of putting Mr. Loverboy... Oh yeah, and that's what he's talking about, things that you don't want to do. Again, his thing was like violence used to be the way to handle it. Stab a spear into the dude. That'll sort out this one-itis. But the idea of putting Mr. Loverboy into a burlap sack and playing home run derby is tempting, but not a good one. Likewise, if you use violence on her, which would be regarded as something as simple as pushing her off the top of him, you may find yourself punted into the court system. So violence, despite its natural appeal, is a poor solution for the modern man. The solution is that in the relationship, the other man needs to be interrupted as fast as you can. Plain English, you got to cock block him. The longer you let it go on, the worse things get. You need to get very firmly and clearly intervene and make it clear that she's risking the marriage. Either she has to break it off or get out. If she's actually cheating, he talks about it in the next chapter here. Now, blindly believing she would never cheat, that's one of the last problems that a lot of guys have. They think, oh, she would never do that. We actually had a guy in our private community talking about that. I won't say who, but it was a divorce process, and he was thinking, she's not one of those kinds to do one of those like very, weaponized divorces. She seems pretty amicable. I think she's good. She's good. We got history together. We got kids. And I'm like, dude, give it 6 months. And sure enough, we drilled it into his head. Prepare as if she's the meanest, crappiest girl you've ever met. And then sure enough, they got there. 6 months later, he's like, oh boy, she turned it on. She turned it on the tap. She became feral. So thank God, 6 months ago he planned. And Athol says it here, trust her enough that you don't climb up her ass trying to find out where she is every minute of the day. Just don't be blind about being a normal woman with sexual desires. If you get that sick feeling in the pit of your stomach that something isn't right, just don't rationalize it away. Trust, but verify. Another issue you have, soulmates, believing that you're soulmates. With soulmates, there's a sense of powerlessness that goes along with it. You're just soulmates. It's just magical. It's so effortless. We just know what the other person's thinking, and we're just drawn to each other. It's as if the relationship has a power all its own, and the couple involved are passengers. It's a wonderful experience, but relies on the strength of hormonal attraction to sustain. So as soon as you start thinking about soulmates, you're essentially letting go of your control over your life and the things in your life, and you're just letting life happen to you, which is great. Girls love that because they follow their feelings, they get what they want, and then you'll just like, it happens, it happens. They get everything. You get nothing. So yeah, no. One of the reasons I am so serious about couples having regular sex, even below average sex, is that sex is one of the most potent ways to strengthen and maintain a pair bond. So if you're not having it, you're losing that bond, and I guarantee you, she's going to get that dopamine fix somewhere. If you're lucky, it's an alcohol problem. If you're not so lucky, it's the pool boy. But quite often, The entire concept of a soulmate is just a rationalization justifying taking action that someone else's body agenda suggested. If your wife ever suggests that another man she feels is her soulmate, take that extremely seriously. He adds another section in here, playing with non-monogamy. I like how he's added it to the section of guys who do stupid things and the stupidity of guys in relationships. You know what I mean? I'm going to lump in cuckolding, swinging, and polyamory as essentially all the same thing. I'm sure devotees of all three varieties of non-monogamy would feel uncomfortable with that, but all three boil down to legitimizing women having sex with multiple men with their primary partner's consent. Fundamental level, most guys do not like that last part there. You want me to be okay with you railing other people. Well, that's you were doing that. Yeah. Men and women are different. Again, this is the primary thing. If they try to appeal to you as like logic or fair play, just realize they're trying to manipulate you. It's like, no. Now, it's not my place to judge. If part of your map is opening up the relationship, that's fine. His point here, though, is that opening it up on the female side of the relationship comes with a lot of problems. And if you want to deal with those, that's fine. But just be aware you're setting yourself up for failure. In general, it's a weakness display of the highest order to allow another man to have sex with your wife and a turn off for almost all women. The fact that most wives don't agree to start these until their husband begging them for it reduces her attraction to him. Don't confuse the wife's sexual excitement for her husband after having sex with another man as increased attraction to her husband. It's simply carrying over from the rush she felt from the other man and her desire to have some competition from within inside her. Likewise, when you allow another man to have sex with your wife, you're making a weakness display to the other man as well. He'll gain enormous confidence in his ability to best you, and you're actively encouraging him to move against your interest in your wife. Your best friend may have desired your wife for many years, but never thought he could steal her from you. So once you allow him to sleep with her, he knows he could probably take her from you. Now, usually when this stuff comes up, there's always some poly chick saying, oh, this is wonderful. What are you talking about? I'm not like this. It's always them. It's never, this doesn't make sense. This isn't right. It's always, well, it doesn't apply to me. I remember this. Purple Pill Debate had these two chicks for the longest time talking about this. One was like the tail end of I wasted my 20s, got married to like the beta provider, the beta bucks thing that Rolo always calls it. And she's like, oh, it's perfect. I don't need any of this stuff. You guys are completely wrong. The other one, poly. Same thing. Oh, we're not like this. We're not jealous. It's great. Funny enough, 3 years in, both of them end up cheating and leaving their men anyway. And then all of a sudden people just kind of ignored that whole line of thought. It's like, well, you just saw flat out with the users there an example of why this stuff is right. And you guys chose to ignore it. And at that point, write it off. Anybody who tries to argue this stuff isn't even going to learn it the hard way. They're going to pretend. They just stick their head in the sand. You don't want it. So the last error, I think it's the last one, it might be the second to last, is trying to stay married to somebody who's batshit crazy. When you run this map on a normal woman, she generally responds positively. Unfortunately, some women are batshit crazy. As in, really diagnosably as mentally ill with a personality disorder, some extreme form of something that's not within the norm, which leads to the question, what happens when you run a map on a woman who is batshit crazy? Well, if you're doing something alpha, this threatens them, so it triggers an acute episode of being batshit crazy. This will look like a fitness test, but it's not a fitness test. It's just them being batshit crazy. In a fitness test, there's some sort of subconscious plan being run by her body agenda to test if you can respond with appropriate dominance. When somebody formally diagnosed or potentially formally diagnosed as being batshit crazy and is having an acute episode of behavior, they don't care whether or not you pass the test because they're acting batshit crazy. When you do something beta for them, they quite enjoy it and lap it up because being batshit crazy actually takes up a great deal of effort. It turns out crazy is not sustainable. It takes effort. You get no points, however, for doing anything beta as their relationship comfort, which you can't ever improve properly. Batshit crazy sufferers are always deeply disturbed and can't be pleased or comforted. So you just wasted your efforts in doing beta things for them and just said you can have a break from being crazy for a minute and then go back to craziness. So he talks about the 5 phases. Generally, when somebody's going batshit crazy, you don't really have a chance to do the map as you're too busy coping with them as being in one of the 5 stages of being batshit crazy. Phase 1, threatening to be batshit crazy. Phase 2, acute crisis. Actually doing something batshit crazy. Phase 3. By the way, monetization's gone if you haven't figured that out yet. So, like I said, your super chats and your views and your likes make all the difference. I unfortunately can't be family friendly enough to have YouTube pay the bills, so any support you guys can give on this one would be absolutely wonderful. Again, feel free, hit a like on the video. Let's keep this thing going. Phase 3, recovering from the effects of being batshit crazy. Phase 4, being very nice to you out of guilt from her batshit craziness. And Phase 5, suddenly realizing that you're an asshole for not meeting their demands in Phase 1, where she threatened to be batshit crazy. The cycle repeats endlessly. 10-second kisses, text messages, flirting, cooking dinner, fondling her in the shower. It doesn't work on those. I hate to say it, but on those ones. So if you ever see, and it's funny how often this maps to it, but people who are, I guess, abusive tend to gravitate towards these craziness because their abuse is almost like the only check for it. I'm sure you guys have heard it. These are really horrible things, by the way, where a lot of like girls that were in abusive relationships, they get out and they talk about it later and they say, well, when he hit me, that means I know he cares, which is a real messed up thing to do. But keep in mind, those kind of girls, and then they end up finding some guy who's not anything like her abusive ex-boyfriend, treats that guy like trash, and then leaves him for the abusive boyfriend because at least he gave her the dopamine hit. Crazy and thuggish alpha type personality works well together. Yeah, whatever. If you want to be one of those guys, that's fine, but you're not listening to this. You're probably too busy doing crack on your own. You know what I mean? Anyways, that's going to be it on this. Next part is going to be dealing with her if she cheats. And I think we're going to end that off, like I said, chapter 27 and chapter 28. What is 28? Check back with my notes. Oh, there it is. So tomorrow is going to be the final episode, dealing with her if she cheats, how to choose a wife. Thank you, Michael Landstander, for the $5 super chat. Nothing added to it for text, so... But anyway, super appreciate the support. Tomorrow, though, we're going to talk dealing with her if she cheats, how to choose a wife, marriage 2.0, and then he ends it with 10 things you can do right now and spreading the word. I'm going to kind of skim a lot of those because how to choose a wife, the vetting process, I think is horribly mistaken in his article, and I'll explain why there. The 10 things you can do right now, I might make another like red meat video of it, like a listicle. 10 things you can do right now, 3 might surprise you, and spreading the word. Generally, red pilling your friends doesn't work, and it's a waste of time. And I'm surprised he actually ended this off on that. So dealing with her if she cheats is probably going to end. Marriage 2.0 are probably going to be the big ones. I got a lot of supplemental data to put with those, so we should like it anyway. But again, huge shout out. Thank you, Michael Landstander. By the way, I love your Avi. It's one of those things I got to get. Enjoy yourself, guys. Hope you like it. If you're working on your relationships, again, don't forget to pick up the Married Man Sex Life Primer 2011. Follow through it. Don't take it as sacrosanct. It's not a perfectly written manual. There's a lot of errors with it. So you definitely want to supplement this stuff with Rational Male, Robert Glover, Ian Ironwood, and then apply that to your life in the way that works. Because not everything here is going to work for you. We already talked about how the 10-second kiss doesn't work for me. Some other guys don't like the shower font.